It is a very special honor. I want to welcome everyone, but especially I would like to honor our United States Senator, Senator Lisa Murkowski. Thank you so much, first of all, for just being here, but also for agreeing to participate in a panel discussion with the students. Let's give Senator a hand, please. If we could go ahead and get the folks that are in the back to come on and find a seat. We've got plenty of room. And while they're doing that, my name is John Riddle. I'm the principal of Glean Interior Learning Academy. And if you could please take out your cell phones, not to do something, play a game with them, but if you could please turn them off or silence them, as I'm doing to mine right now. There we go. Now that we have done that, let's see here. Let's see, we've done that. I know. I'd also like to make sure that we don't have an in and out going here. We're in here. We'd like you to stay. You're in for a great evening, so let's make sure we're not going in and out, okay? Now, just before we get started, if you could stand and please join with us as our own Abigail Landrum leads us in our Pledge of Allegiance. As we stand and remove our caps. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now that you've just sat down, I would like for you to remain standing as our own much beloved, let's go ahead and stand up, as our own much beloved and creator of our music program and international recording artist, Ms. Carrie Pavish Anderson, sings our Alaska State Song.
Stars of gold on a field of blue, Alaska's flag made me to you. The blue of the sea, the evening sky, the mountains, lakes, and the flowers nearby. The gold of the early sourdough streams, the precious gold of the hills and streams, the brilliant stars in the northern sky, the bear, the dipper, and shining high, the great North Star with its steady light, o'er land and sea, a beacon bright. Alaska's flag to Alaskans dear, the simple flag of the last frontier.
Carrie told me a story a little earlier about some girls several years ago that had watched a series of scary movies. They thought it was a great idea, but when they got back to their room, they were completely freaked out. And Carrie went to their room and with a guitar and sang them all softly until they were all asleep. So fantastic. Always love listening to that beautiful song and also to you singing it. Now I would like to welcome Senator Murkowski up to the stage, please. Here we go. There's some water there if needed. Okay, and now if our Hawk Highlights students and journalism students would come to the stage, please. I'm going to now turn this over to Ms. London Keplinger, who will be moderating our event our discussion this evening. London?
Thank you.
When you're done, when each of you are done asking the question, if you can turn it off and then turn it back on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Riddle. I'd like to thank you for your time and for visiting us again. Lisa Murkowski is the senior senator for the state of Alaska. She was born in Ketchikan and raised in towns across the state. She, as a mother and a former PTA president, she has made education one of her first priorities as a public servant, and she is serving her third term as U.S. Senator for the state. Tonight's questions and answers will be monitored by us, and it will be taking place in two parts. First, the Hawk Highlights are going to be asking questions, and then we'll turn the questions over to the audience. So, yes. Okay, for the first question, how has the decision to legalize marijuana impacted rural Alaska, and what should the federal government do to assist those communities dealing with the impact of legalization?
London, first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank the panel, and I want to thank all of the students and those that are gathered here tonight for the opportunity to have a conversation. Mr. Riddle, thank you for making this happen. We appreciate it, and the exchange between the students here is something that I value and I have looked forward to. I also want to acknowledge an extraordinary performance by Carrie. Your rendition of the Alaska State song was as beautiful as any I've heard, so thank you. You've got a real treasure right here in your school, so kudos to you. So the issue of marijuana. Several years ago, the state of Alaska moved forward to legalize not only medical marijuana, but the recreational use of marijuana. This was not something that I supported. I believe that in this state we struggle with enough issues relating to substance abuse, whether it is alcohol, whether it is marijuana, whether it is drugs such as heroin or meth or cocaine or fentanyl. We have enough challenges that face us. Having said that, the state voted to legalize, and we are one of about, I think there's about 7 states that have fully legalized marijuana, as we have more that have legalized medical use. The challenge is that the federal laws still recognize marijuana as a controlled substance. So you have a conflict between your federal laws and your state laws. So for instance, if you are a legal vendor, a legal seller of marijuana in the state of Alaska, you can't put your proceeds that you have lawfully received in a bank, because a bank is federally regulated. So it puts up a very insecure, unsafe situation where the state has legalized the sale of a product. The sale allows for revenues to come in, but then the revenues can't be kept safe in a federally regulated institution. So you have the vendor that has to sit on cash, which could be an attractive opportunity for somebody who might do harm. So how we reconcile this is going to be important going forward. So that's one of the things that I have to do as a United States Senator, is try to reconcile at the federal level some of the conflicts that we have right now. It's not easy, and it's going to take us a while. Your question, though, is more to how has legalization impacted us here in the state of Alaska? I happen to believe that what we're seeing is not only a more permissive view towards marijuana, but perhaps a more permissive view of other drugs. And again, I don't think that helps us as a people. I want us to be healthy. I want our minds to be sharp. I don't want it dulled by alcohol or drugs. I don't want the impact that comes when we are addicted as a society. So it's a very odd time for us right now. This is hard to reconcile. I've got a tough job, you can see. Thank you for the question, Elaine.
I would like to take this moment to welcome the student sitting next to me. We have Wasley Gus, 16, from New Stuyahawk. We have Aiden Deal, 17, from Wasilla. Lydia Chinook, 18, from New Stuyahawk. Cora Jones, 18, from Kotzebue. And Erin Sussex, 17, from Point Lay. Thank you for answering. And Lydia, you're next.
Should the Pebble Mine be open, and if it is not open, what should be done to support the local economy of that area?
Pebble Mine, very controversial issue around the state of Alaska. It's an extraordinary mineral resource. We've identified that on state lands. But in addition to hosting extraordinary mineral resources, it's also located in the watershed of our most significant salmon fishery. The sockeye salmon there is the most significant fishery of red salmon in the world. And so you have two resources that people could say could be competing. I happen to believe that when we access our resources, it should not be viewed as you can either have fish or gold. It shouldn't be an either or. If we're going to be able to access the mineral resources, we cannot sacrifice our fisheries resource, right? So how can we do that? Is it possible? Well, I'm not an engineer, I'm not that scientist, but that's what we ask our regulators to do at the state level and at the federal level. To review the plan that has now been laid down, in fact, they just put it down not too long ago, to review it and make a determination as to whether or not this mine can be done safely and without consequence to the safety and the health of our wild stock. And if it can't be done, then that mine shouldn't be built. But if it can be done, and it can be done safely with appropriate safeguards, that does allow for a level of jobs and opportunity. If the plans that have been laid out prove to move forward, it can possibly work to reduce the energy cost of people in that region, which is important. So there are benefits that could come with opening the mine. Jobs, reduced energy, perhaps lower transportation costs. If the mine doesn't go forward, the jobs that I think we look to in that region, obviously strong fisheries, but there's more that can be done that I think is important. You've got tourism opportunities. People like to come out and go fishing. One of the things that we're seeing now that is kind of exciting for young people as an opportunity is to train the young people to be guides, to take people, if somebody comes up from the lower 48 and they want to go out fishing, have one of the young people from New Stu who has their six-pack license. You can take them out and you have opportunities for not only earning income, but also educating people about the beauty and the splendor of your area and your fisheries resource. Important question today is the Pebble Mine and the development of other mineral resources. Thanks, Lydia.
When you were talking about the opioid epidemic, you said we feel that personal impact on these small remote villages even more. How have you been personally affected by the opioid epidemic in this state? And what are you doing to deal with this problem?
Opioid abuse and the epidemic that we're seeing, substance abuse in general, alcohol abuse, we are challenged as a state, and I think we see the impacts, and they are heavy because they hurt our families, they hurt our communities, and it is a very heavy reality that we deal with. I have not personally had a loss of a family member, but I have far too many friends who are dealing with, whether it's children or relatives who have an addiction that they're suffering from. For some, it is heroin. For some, it is meth. For many, it is alcohol. And again, the addiction is very, very, very serious. Addiction is a disease, okay? Addiction is not just something that you can say, all right, tomorrow I'm going to stop using heroin. If you've been using and you are an addict, you need help. And it's okay to ask for help. And it is okay as young people to let your friend know or your family member know that it is okay to ask for help. I sit on the HELP committee, the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee. And many of the hearings that we have held this year have been focused on the opioid epidemic around the country and the staggering number of deaths due to opioid overdose. More people died of opioid addiction, heroin or pills, last year than died in car accidents around the United States of America. Think about that. Think about what that means. We had an author, he's a journalist for the Los Angeles Times, and he came to speak to our committee because he has been doing years and years of research and writing about the epidemic and how heroin has come into our country and how it moves and all that goes into it. And he said, we need to treat the opioid epidemic like we treated the moonshot. In other words, long back before any of you were born, you know, as a country, our president said, we're going to put a man on the moon, and everybody said, yes, we're going to do it. And we did it. And it motivated Americans. And so this journalist was saying, we need to have this be our moonshot. We need to say, we are going to eliminate opioid addiction. We're going to wipe this out. And I said, the problem with that is that addiction is kept quiet and it's kept hidden. Nobody wants to talk about the brother that died of an overdose. It was an addict. Because it sounds like it's such a horrible and bad word. Like this was a person who just couldn't do anything right. That addict had a disease. And so how we come together to get rid of the stigma of addiction so that treatment can be made available, so that it can be sought out, so that you can get help is so, so very important. And when I asked this journalist, I said, how can we come together with an initiative to say we're going to conquer this when there's so much stigma and negativity about being an addict? And he said, leaders need to give voice to those who have been impacted, those who have lost family members, those who have lost friends, to give them a voice to say, we will not tolerate this anymore. We will change this. We will not allow this in our community. I don't know if any of you here are from Quinnahock. Anybody from down in that region? Down in the YK area? There's 800 people that live in Quinnahock, more than here, but 4 overdoses from heroin that had fentanyl in. This fentanyl stuff can kill you like that. It's happening in our villages. This is not just Anchorage. This is not just the valley. This is coming to us. And so I feel like part of my job is to raise this issue everywhere I go. And to make sure that families know that they need to lift their voices, that friends need to lift their voices and say, we're here to help you because this must be dealt with. My answer was far too long, but it's so important. It's so important to us in this state. So thank you.
What was your first personal reaction when you heard about the shooting at the school in Parkland, Florida?
I'm only pausing because I want to tell you the truth. When I first heard of the shooting in Parkland, Florida, I was at a meeting and I had my cell phone and I just kind of glanced at it, and one of the pop-ups said, shooting at school in Florida, multiple dead. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, how terrible. And then I went back to my meeting. That's what's terrible. Because it was like, oh yeah, another shooting. Another shooting. That's not acceptable anywhere. And it wasn't until I got home that night and I had a chance to actually sit down and read what had happened and see on the news what had gone on that day. That just the horror of it sunk in again. The horror of it. And it took me back to when I was a legislator in Juneau. And this was 19 years ago. I was on the floor of the House chamber, and there was word that went around that said that there had been a shooting in a place called Columbine High School in Colorado, and that students and teachers had been shot. And I was physically sick. My children were young at the time. They were in maybe 3rd and 5th grade. And they were in Anchorage, and I was in Juneau. And I was a full plane away, a full day away from being able to see for myself whether they were okay. And I thought, as a parent, if I can't know that my children are safe in school, how can any of us feel safe? And then it took me back to Bethel. How many of you from Bethel? You remember when we had a shooting in Bethel and we lost a student and a couple administrators, and you realize that what we saw play out with Parkland and Columbine has happened here in our state too. And so when I think about the challenges that I face as your representative back in Washington, D.C., this is really deep and troubling. Because I feel as a lawmaker, part of my responsibility is to protect the people that I represent, but I'm also a mom, and I feel like I should be there to protect kids. And knowing that because we have people, young people in our schools, we have people who will pray, who are pray on us, not pray for us, who are mentally ill, who are very, very troubled and who need that help and who have not been able to get it. And they will inflict violence on us. You feel great responsibility for caring and protecting. We are a state where we have guns. I have guns. I'm a hunter. I've got a gun safe at home. I'm not even quite sure between myself, my boys, my family, how many guns we have because we use them for going out hunting. And I got great respect for firearms, firearm safety, the Second Amendment, and I'm a strong and proud supporter of the Second Amendment. But I also know that there are certain people who in their state of mind should not have access to a firearm. And so how we balance the need for protection and the need to be able to provide for our families through hunting with making sure that there is a level of safety and security from those who would do violence. These are big issues for us. Thanks, Wesley.
Do you think that there should be stricter gun laws? And if so, what do you think they should be?
Well, that's the natural follow-on to the question. I think that we must focus on who is using the firearm. And again, this goes back to some of the mental health issues, ensuring that we are providing for the help, that those who clearly need the help so that they will not inflict that violence. I think that is appropriate. There are some things that we have done, just passed laws, updating some of the safety procedures, if you will. 2 weeks ago, we passed into law what we call the NICS fix, which is ensuring that the information that is recorded when you purchase a firearm goes into a data bank that is shared, because if that information isn't shared, it doesn't do us much good. One of the other measures that was enacted into law was a prohibition on what they call the bump stock. I didn't, I'm a gun owner, I didn't know what a bump stock was until the Las Vegas shooting brought it onto the front page, where somebody manipulates or effectively reconfigures a firearm. So they're basically tampering with a lawfully purchased firearm to allow it to be a more lethal weapon. It only made sense to outlaw bump stocks. I think we saw that. I wish that we had done it sooner. Some of the considerations that are out there now, you're seeing in the march that was just several weeks ago. Limitations on younger people from purchasing a firearm, moving the age from 18 to 21. Currently, to purchase a handgun, it's an age 21 requirement. Long gun, 18. That's a conversation that I think it's important here in Alaska. We have a discussion about that. In my family, our sons started hunting when they were probably about 10. I would imagine that some of you probably started younger than that. It didn't mean that you could purchase your own gun. That's not what we're talking about here. But I think that there is a recognition that in Alaska, where we have a great deal of hunting that provides for our families, that when we're talking about limiting or increasing the age for purchasing, that might be a broader statewide conversation. And some of the other considerations that, again, we're looking to as a Congress, do we ban assault rifles? I'm a hunter. I'm not that good of a shot, but I sure don't need an assault rifle to go bring down a deer. And so these are important discussions for us to be having as a society. Thank you.
What inspired you to be such a strong advocate for Alaskans?
Well, I'm born and raised here. And I've had the good fortune, I think, of living in different parts of the state. I was born down in Ketchikan, and we lived in small island communities when I was growing up in Wrangell, little town down in southeast, and lived in Juneau as well growing up. And then we moved kind of in and out of Anchorage. I went to high school in Fairbanks. But I have a love for this place and for the people that it's just kind of me, kind of defines me. I even, my necklace, I should probably wear fancy necklaces, but I have a little piece of just metal around my neck that it's just the state of Alaska with a little heart underneath it, and it probably cost me $5. It's my favorite necklace of all. But it is easy to be an advocate for the people of Alaska because we are so unique in so many different ways, but there is so much that brings us together in common. I think about the diversity of our native peoples, whether you're a Tlingit. I was adopted into the Tlingit clan. I'm Deshitan, which is Eagle Raven. My adopted name is Anshawatki, which means Lady of the Land. You've got Alaskans, Nupiat, Yupik, Aleut. We have great diversity amongst our native people, and yet so much that we share in common. You listen to some of the language, you look at the art, you follow the dancing, and you see so many threads of commonality. You have extraordinary people who have come to this state drawn by the mystery and the allure, and they bring extraordinary gift to Alaska. And it's not just some of the gold miners that came up seeking gold. It is the many cultures that make up the fabric of Alaska. In my son's school, when London introduced me, she said that I was a PTA president. In my little neighborhood school in Anchorage, Alaska, where I was PTA president, there were 56 different languages that were spoken among the student body population of a couple hundred kids. And they came from all over. They came from Albania. They came from Colombia and Guatemala. And they were Hmong, and they were Sudanese. And right there in my own little neighborhood in Anchorage. So I've got native people who have been here for thousands of years, and then refugees from a sub-Saharan country who call Alaska home. I think it is one of the most extraordinary places. And then you just throw in the natural beauty and splendor of it all. Everybody wants to come to Alaska. They want to go to Hawaii, but they really want to come and see Alaska. So it's easy to be passionate about Alaska. Thanks, Corey. I should ask you guys where you're passionate about it. I'm taking too long. We're not going to get to the audience questions.
Got this, Aiden.
Do you like muktuk?
All right, you always have to be honest with kids. I've had some muktuk that was okay. I do like to try all kinds of different foods. So when we just came from the potluck, I had the first time that I've ever tried beaver. I've never had beaver before today, and so it was pretty good. It's a little tough, but it was pretty good. But what I tell you what I love. What I love is the sharing that goes on with the whale at Nulakatuk. For those of you who have not been up north, did they have Nulakatuk in Kotzebue? Probably not. Barrow, Point Hope, right? So everybody comes and they sit in a circle on the beach, and every part of that whale is shared. Every part of that whale is shared. And how it's distributed, and just the celebration all day, from the morning into the afternoon to the blanket toss at night. It is the most special ceremony. It's fabulous. And the visiting that goes on, it's just extraordinary. And so, yeah, you can deal with the muktuk when you're at Nulakatuk.
Before I give this to London, I'm going to ask, do you like stinkhead?
Oh, you know, that one I really couldn't eat. The smell just got to me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But I'm seeing some of you shake your heads like you couldn't do it either, right? Are you with me on this?
I got this.
All right. There's somebody out there who will make sure that they get the stinkhead, but man, I couldn't do it. Gotta be honest.
Thank you for answering all of our questions. That was awesome. I'd like to invite the audience to ask questions to Senator Murkowski if they'd like to. Yes?
Do you support wildlife co-management?
Do you support wildlife co-management?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In fact, I have been working, my team in Washington, D.C. and here in Alaska has been working with OTNA in the interior on a co-management agreement that would allow for well, management is what I'm looking for, but to ensure that there is there's opportunity for the local tribes there to practice their subsistence, to be able to gain their access to game, to the moose, to the caribou in the region, and we were just successful in this last appropriations bill in getting money to help facilitate that co-management program with OTNA. So it's the first co-management for wildlife that we've seen. We've got a couple different co-management initiatives as they relate to fish on the Kuskokwim and the Yukon. So this is the first for our wild game. So I think it's a good initiative, and it's kind of the test case here. So we'll see how it goes.
Anybody else? Yes?
Don't be shy to say hi.
My teachers say you don't support healthcare. Why is that?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so I really do support healthcare. What I didn't support was the legislation that was before the Senate back in the summer. This was an effort to eliminate, repeal and replace is what is being called. Repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, which was a measure that was put in place about 9 years ago, and it at the time it was passed, it was a very political measure. There was not a single Republican, I'm a Republican, there was not a single Republican that supported it, and the Republicans have been fighting it ever since. Well, there were actually some parts of the Affordable Care Act that I think were actually very helpful to us here in Alaska and around the country. One of the things was that if you have something called a pre-existing condition, say for instance you're at a very, very early age, you develop asthma, and as a 20-year-old you still have asthma. It's a pre-existing condition. What was happening was that some carriers were able to deny you health care because they said, well, you have a pre-existing condition, you're going to be too expensive, and so you can't get health care coverage unless you really, really, really pay a lot for it. Well, that's not right. And so there were some good things that were contained in the Affordable Care Act, like making sure that those who had pre-existing conditions could get coverage, like being able to stay on your parents' insurance up to the age of 26, because health care is expensive and young people weren't able to afford it. There were some other good things that allowed for, I think, us as a state to gain benefit. We were talking earlier about addiction and just the impact that addiction has. Well, one of the things that Alaska took advantage of was Medicaid expansion that has allowed more who need the services because they have the disease of addiction. More of those people have been able to receive care. So I said, all right, let's make sure that we fix the things that need to be fixed in the Affordable Care Act, but let's keep the things that are good. And some wanted to just say, nope, everything is taken off the table. Done, no more. Well, that would have put us back in a situation where as a state that already has the highest healthcare costs in the country, and the highest healthcare insurance in the country, that we would have just gone further through the roof in terms of our costs. And I said, nope, I can't vote for that. I need to support something that is going to help Alaskans. And I believed that what was proposed was going to hurt Alaskans and cause us to pay even more for our access to health care. So I said, hold the phone, let's get this right. And so I voted against it. It was very controversial because it was important to the president, it was important to the Republicans, but in my view, it's more important to the country to get health care right. And so I'm continuing to work to do just that. And when we get it right for Alaska, we'll get it right for the country.
We have time for one more question. Yes?
How do you feel about Anchorage's East High hiring a local police officer to fire blanks in the hallways as a so-called drill for the shootings going on around the country?
Can you explain it? Yeah, he's going to explain it to you.
East High School over in Anchorage, in preparation in case of a shooting, has hired police officers to fire blanks in the hallway.
Well, okay. I am a supporter of making sure that our schools have a level of training. I hate the idea that we have to have a training, that you have to have a lockdown drill, that you have to know how to respond in the event of an active shooter. It causes me to think that we haven't done our job. But I also recognize that today is different than when I was in high school. And so if we need you to know how to respond, then training is appropriate. This is the first that I've heard that you would train for it by enacting, if you will, an active shooter in the hallway with blanks. I don't care if they're blanks. It's one thing, again, to know where to go and where it's safe and how to secure rooms. I don't feel very good about that. I think you can tell from my body language. One of the things that I do support is something that, again, was just enacted in law in this past 10 days or so. It's called the Stop Violence Act, and this is an approach that was actually developed by the parents of the elementary students at Sandy Hook when there was that terrible massacre that took place there. And it is focused on identifying those who need help, to keep them from engaging in active violence in the first place. And what they have done and what they have put in place in many of the schools are just ways that you can share your concerns about a friend, a classmate, maybe even somebody out in the community. But nobody wants to rat on anybody, right? And besides that, you're thinking, well, he's just being weird. He just said a stupid thing and he really didn't mean it. And then the next time he says another really stupid thing and it kind of weirds you out. It's like, whoa, what is going on? And you don't know what to do with it. Well, one of the things that they have focused on is being able to anonymously use your iPhone, use your app, your phone as an app to share this information. Maybe this information is important to get to a counselor in the school. Maybe it's serious enough that the FBI needs to know about it. But we're using our technology and our tools to try to better understand and prepare or not prepare to prevent horrific things from happening. So I kind of digress from your question, but I think if I were a parent at East High School, I don't think I'd like that. I don't think I'd like it as a teacher either. I don't think I'd like it as a student. How would you guys, what would you think?
I would feel hyped up.
Hyped up, yeah. Hyped up in a good way, in a bad way. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you to everybody who asked questions, and we are all out of time for that. Thank you, Ms. Murkowski, for your time.
Thank you.
And
This has been a great panel. Thank you very much.
I did it too, yes. I'd like to say that I have lived in multiple states. And there's some folks out here, maybe teachers, that have lived in multiple states. Never in my life have I had the opportunity to speak to my United States Senator. I've been here for 6 years, and Senator Murkowski, at least 3 times I've seen you here and have been able to talk to you. This is not an easy place to get to, yet you're still here and present, and that means a lot to us. So the first person I want to thank is Senator Murkowski. Thank you so much.
I thank you for that, but one of the things that I want to share with each of you, it doesn't make any difference how small or how remote your community is. I've been out to New Stew. I've been to Point Hope. I've been here to Galena several times. I try to get out across the state, but you need to know that every community in this state is important. Not just Anchorage and Fairbanks and Juneau. Not just Wasilla and Kenai and the places on the road system. Don't ever think that because you live in rural Alaska that you are any less than any other Alaskan, that you deserve any less than any other Alaskan. You deserve to be represented in your legislature, in your Congress, and it is our job as your elected leaders to make sure that we are hearing from you. So this is a great way to get feedback and input from a lot of different corners and a lot of small places. But know how important rural Alaska is to the state of Alaska. In my view, you are the heart of Alaska. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. The other group I would like to thank is London, you and the Hawk Highlights here for the evening, but also I want you to look around. One of the things I'm most proud of is being able to work with you guys. From over 80 different villages, you are the coolest kids I have ever worked with. You're beautiful, you're wonderful. Let's give yourselves a hand. Now the last thing is, Senator Murkowski very kindly thanked me for making this happen and put this together, and I appreciated that, but I'm not the one that did this. Mr. A, can you please come on stage? Let's give Mr. A a hand. Yes, and for everything you do. Again, Senator Murkowski, do you leave, are you here for a couple of days, or do you leave tomorrow or tonight?
Tomorrow, mid-afternoon, late afternoon.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you so much. Let's give Senator Murkowski a big round of applause.
I forgot. Okay, I don't ever go to a school without leaving things behind. Sometimes I leave my coat. She's laughing because she had to go have it shipped. It took like 3 months to get it from Shonak, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to leave my coat behind, but what I will leave behind is a book for the library as well as a special presentation. So, London, since you let us off, if you want to go ahead, this is my favorite book. I'm not just kissing up because I'm here in Galena and it's the home of Sidney Huntington. This is the book that I give to high schools all over the state because in my view it is one of the most extraordinary reads about an Alaskan, and it's Sidney Huntington's life, Shadows on the Koyukuk. But I've also made sure that the school has a flag. So Sydney, if you want to, or Sydney, London, if you want to go ahead and open it, open the, and then you need to.
Okay. The flag of the United States of America. This is to certify that the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol at the request of U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski in honor of the 2018 Galena Interior Learning Academy School visit.
So we say that proudly. So I'll tell you it's not a funny story, I'll tell you a real story about the flags. There is somebody in Washington, D.C. whose job it is to put that flag, attach it to a flagpole, run it up the flagpole. It waves in the wind in Washington, D.C., and then they lower it down, they fold it up, and they put it in a box so that I can bring it here. That's somebody's job. I hope you all have higher aspirations than just being the kid that puts the flag on the flagpole and sends it up and sends it down. But this flag did fly over the United States Capitol, and we did request it to be flown in recognition of this visit to the school. So thanks for letting me share with you.
Thank you. And thank you for that wonderful gift. Thank you so much. I tell you what I would like to do, in case some of you would like to shake hands with your United States Senator. Senator, if you would like to go ahead and make your way out to the front area before I dismiss this group, that way they can kind of see us. Absolutely. Let's get a picture here before we do that. So everybody just stay where you are for now. Very good. Now, if some of our teachers or adults out there could help us, maybe get kids out there as Senator walks out. What I'd like to do first is go ahead and dismiss that back group. Or actually, you know what? We'll dismiss. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me? Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Senator Murkowski. Thank you, Tara. Actually, I'm very glad you said that. Yes. Okay, now Senator Murkowski will be out there for you to shake her hand, speak to whatever you'd like to do. Thank you, guys. You're always wonderful. Tonight was no exception. Have a great evening.